Dobrodošli, Bog svima. Thank you so much for coming. I know it's been really difficult to come here because of the rain, but we appreciate you for coming to join our roundtable. Today we're going to be discussing African adversities in Croatia. And we're just going to start, and everyone's going to introduce themselves in the panel. But for now, I think we can give the floor to our president, the president of the Pan-African Association, Dr. Cedric. So he's going to give you a brief introduction. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to try to say this in Croatian, but I'm not so good at Croatian, so I'm going to also be talking in English in the meanwhile. Dragi gosti, dragi prijatelji, čast nam je imati vas ovdje na ovaj prvi raspravi o nedaćama trećih zemalja u našoj Hrvatskoj. It's a special event for us today to have you all because, you know, we want to share with you what we think is going on for us living in Croatia and what we think can be done in order to bring a change to all of this. As a global community, we face a choice. Do we want migrations to be a source of prosperity and international solidarity, or a byword for inhumanity and social friction? These are not my words. This is from Antonio Guterres, who is the UN Secretary. In Croatia, migration is usually tied to what I would call a forced migration. This is a big hi to everybody who's from the media. What I call a forced migration is what is tagged as illegal immigration. But we all know what does it mean to move from point A to point B. It's a migration. And all of us have ever had this time in their life, moving from our town, birth town, to another town, from our home country to another country. Whatever is the purpose for work, for love, for changing condition, for looking for a better future, or for just following a dream, is a migration. In the process, there's always many questions coming up. Fear, anxiety, dreams, but as well hope. And as many of us here, we have been doing this trip and we have faced a lot of problems, but we have also had a lot of joy doing it. And this conference is only about discussing what can be done for the future generation and for us living here to have a better living condition and a better right. So thank you all of you for being here, and we hope to have a good panel with all of you. Thank you.
Okay, a round of applause. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. So we decided to choose this topic, African adversities, because I think we all can relate. We all go through some adversities in life, no matter where you come from. But this is basically for us as Africans a place for us to vent and a place for us to share with you our experiences and let you see things through our eyes. But we're not only talking about adversities, we're also talking about solutions and things that we can do in order for us to live here in a more peaceful way. And so to start off the panel talk, I think I'll give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves when they start. So firstly, we have Lucia. So I will give this question to Lucia, and I'll say, what are the statistics? How many African people are living in Croatia? How many migrants do you know? Do you know maybe the statistics or something like that? Yes.
No? Yes, sorry. Hi, Hamidat, welcome. We just started with Cedric's speech, so thank you for joining. Thank you, Fadzi, for this question. I'm Lucia Merlic from Center for Peace Studies, and I can give somewhat of a response for you. I tried to gather some statistics, but it came out that it's actually very difficult to get accurate statistics on the number of Africans living in Croatia. When we were preparing this panel, we actually talked a bit about some numbers that we have heard being spoken around, like from 500 to around 1,000 people living, but probably the number is a bit higher than that, my guess. I can tell you that from the State Bureau of Statistics, that kind of gathers yearly statistics on migration, so immigration and immigration in Croatia. It's a steady, let's say around 50, 60 people every year from different African countries moving to Croatia, and the number has risen to around 130, 140 every year in the last couple of years. So if we're counting from 2017 up until 2021, the number is around 600 people who are, of course, registered with the Bureau. So, you know, the numbers probably are higher, and not including the many people who, of course, migrated before 2017. So this is some kind of statistics. Here it's not noted for which reasons. So then I tried to look at student statistics, and it says like that there's like 1,700 foreign students in total in Croatia. Most of them are students from European Union countries or from the region. So that like 90% of this 1,700 goes to the students of all these countries. So, and then it's very difficult to actually get the numbers of Africans, but probably then the number is quite low because most foreign students are EU students. And then I was also checking for work permits issued this year, and it's around 77,000 work permits issued, but this is in total for all people who applied for a work permit this year. Again, when you look at who it is, mostly it's people from the region, and now I guess people in the audience, and also you have seen that there is a big rise of migrant workers arriving from countries like India, Nepal, Pakistan. But again, the statistics of Africans are not noted in that sense. Probably, I'm guessing the numbers of people who are applying for work are also rising, but not as drastically as other numbers. And then finally, I can tell you a bit about the numbers of refugees in Croatia, of which some are Africans. So there has been around 25,000 asylum seekers in the last 15 years, but only 1,000, around 1,000 granted refugee statuses in total in 15 years, and a smaller number, quite small number of those was given to Africans. So this is just like a short overview of how difficult it is actually to get the accurate statistics. And maybe another note is that probably the numbers are not as big, but for sure I'm guessing that they're going to continue to rise. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that information. I was not aware also of those numbers, but I do know we are here, and I think more of us are wanting to move here for various reasons, like you mentioned. There are refugees, there are asylum seekers, there are people working, studying, so many different reasons of coming to Croatia, and I think those numbers are going to maybe increase in the future, so having such discussions is very important. So on that regard, I'll just move on to the next speaker, Florette. You can also introduce yourself a little bit, but your question is in terms of personal life, like, I don't know, we're going to get a little personal, but in terms of personal life, depending on how much you want to share, how did you find yourself in Croatia, and what has your journey been like here? Would you say, how's the standard of living in Croatia for you?
Hello. Thank you for this interesting question. My name is Pouabe Florette. I am from Cameroon, and I've been living here almost 10 years, almost 11 years actually. So when I came here 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I came for studies. I came to, I firstly enrolled at the Croaticum for the language, and it was interesting. It was actually I can say one of the best moment of my stay here, because it was just like I didn't have to think about many things, just to go to Croatian languages, coming home, and but after I went at the Faculty of Pharmacy. It was in Croatian language, but that was my, I don't want to say nightmare, but it was really difficult because I thought I was ready for such a faculty in Croatian, and I wasn't. Croatian language is really tough language, and it's really hard to learn it in such a small, in 6 months, I think, or less than 1 year. So my experience here, I have positive things that I can talk about and less positive. I can just say that it's really hard in the beginning if you don't have any support, like from families, or if you don't get money from, I don't know, from brother or from your parents. It's really difficult because the life is really expensive, and it's getting more and more expensive every year. And if you have to study in Croatian and also work at the same time, there are some people who can do it, but it's really, 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 really difficult. And the cost of life, as a foreigner student, it's really a lot. When you work, I remember when I came, we were getting like, I don't know, 18 kuna per hour, and you have to pay also the faculty. If you, as foreigners, you don't have this, okay, if you are lucky, you will have a scholarship. But if you don't have a scholarship, then you have to pay the full tuition fees. It doesn't matter if you are the best at the school, you have to pay everything. And I remember the Faculty of Pharmacy was 3,000 euro. So you have to pay that, and then you have to work also 18 kuna per hours. You need to work a lot of hours to get. And so many people can lose themselves working more than actually studying. And so that was actually my biggest issue, my biggest problem. I was working more than I was actually focusing in the college. So, and also we're going to talk about it later, health assurance and so many things that are really, really too much for regular students. Even if you have support from someone, it's really hard. I think that even if it was something that, I don't know, these expenses of life, I think that even Croatian people living here in their own country, I think it will be really hard for them to pay all that and being successful in Croatia.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for that answer. And I have good news for you. That amount has risen from 18 kunas to a little bit of like double to 35 kunas. And also the cost of living in 10 years. And the cost of living has also increased. So I don't know how you're going to balance that again. But thank you for sharing that. Your journey, a little bit about your journey. Also, I would address this question to Cedric. I think Florette also mentioned a little bit about working in Croatia, like as a student, and also working as a regular like worker. How is that for you? Like, is it so easy for a student to change from being a student and working as a student to finding employment? Like, how has your journey been in terms of that as a African?
Thank you so much for the question. But before I take on this question, I would like to precise two few things about the genesis of PADUH. Because in order to understand our fight, we have to know where we come from. As Florette mentioned, for about 10 years she's been going through some stressful situation and everything. And this is mostly the life of every foreign student in this country, especially coming from third world countries. How did PADUH came up? Because we were facing all of those issues, either with reconnection of diploma, difficulty to access to healthcare, changing status, having good condition in dormitories, at college, and everything else. And each of us were trying to tackle the problem by going to each office and trying to knock at the door. Hey, hi, I'm a student. Why don't I have access to the student center to get the access to the job market? Hi, why my diploma is not recognized and it's recognized in the other country? Why this, why that? And sometimes it will benefit to an individual person. If you knocked at the door 10 times, they will open the door and say, okay, come in, we're going to do it for you. And they will only do it for you without considering that there are other people maybe facing the same problem. So it's in that sense that we realize that instead of striking one by one and trying to solve each one problem, maybe it's better to come together as a group and trying to address all of this issue. And that is how PADUH officially came to life in 2021. It's been 1 year, and only in that year till now, we kind of already see the good work. We are getting heard somehow, and we hope through this panel as well we'll be heard and something will be changing. Coming back to your question, how is it to change from status from a student to a worker? I'm coming as well from Cameroon. I was studying at the medical school in English, and during the time I was also taking Croatian language because I was thinking to enter the specialization program and work as a doctor in Croatia. But soon you realize that if you don't have a, I don't want to say it this way, but it is the way it is. If you don't know someone who knows someone, you cannot easily get a specialization in Rebro or in Dubrava. You have to get a connection, a good one, a strong one, in order to do some of the things. You will go to the, usually, for example, in my field, the first line of work that you can easily get is either work at the Domsdravlje as an obiteljski liječnik or go to the hitna, which is what I did. So I went to the labor market and I started looking at jobs in the hitna, which is what interests me anyway. And I get a job on the seaside. I was interviewed, I got a job, but I couldn't start the job at the same time as all my volets. Everybody who got a job with me got a job because there was some problem with the laws, of course. And the question that came to my head is, why does the country cry every day we don't have enough workers in certain field, but there's no regulation for those who are qualified for that field to directly get into the job market and get the job? For instance, in my case, they first had to ask the permission to the society, I don't know the right name, but it's the society that regulates the work market in Croatia, for them to give the approval. And then after that approval, I had to go to the MOOP to get the approval. And then after the approval of MOOP, I think he had to go up to the ministry for now my company to sign the contract for me to get the working permit in the region. So it took around a month and a half. And then after that I started working. So it's not straightforward. For some people it's okay, for some other people it's not. And this is one of the problems that, you know, many countries have already realized. I will talk about countries in the West, Germany, France, Belgium, or whatever. They have recognized that with the healthcare technology, you know, improving, people live longer in Europe. But there's no new generation. You know, the birth rate is not as high as the life expectancy. People will grow up, get older, live longer, but there will not be a lot of people to take care of them, in the sense that the economical tissue is not going to be strong enough. We're going to talk about maybe later when we'll be talking about the health care, where you have to contribute to take care of the older and the people who are not sick and so on. But what I'm trying to point out is that we should understand that as Croatia is part of the old continent. The old continent is getting old, and there's a need for the authorities to put in place a policy that helps getting benefit from migration, because for sure nothing can stop migration. We just need to get ahead of it and get the benefits out of it. This is what I think.
Thank you so much for that insightful overview. And I think we'll talk more about that in the second section as well. So I've heard a lot, integration. A lot of, I think most of you mentioned that word. So I would like to direct this question to Hamidat. Maybe you can also introduce yourself a little bit, and then you'd answer this question. So what does integration mean to you, moving as an African living in Croatia? Have you managed to integrate into the society? And also the statement, like, integration is a two-sided process. Do you believe it is a two-sided process? And if so, like, can you just share a little bit about that with us?
Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I'm really sorry that I'm late. I spent I would say, 10 minutes trying to find this place. I was downstairs and I came back and I'm thinking, wait, what is going on? So I'm really sorry about that. And my name is Oladayo Hassan, and I've been living here for 5 years. I'm actually Nigerian. The word integration is something that it has a complex definition, in my opinion, and definitely it's a two-way process, because for someone who I would say I've done my best in like learning the language, learning the culture, getting used to almost, you know, every little things here, still you feel that the society needs to reciprocate as well. They need to be more receptive, and I think that's what the statement actually means, in the sense that if you're trying to find housing, you shouldn't be thinking, or should I call and introduce myself as an African, or should I go there, and then the moment the person who is trying to rent the apartment sees that I'm a black person, the person would change their mind. It's on these little things that you see if the society is reciprocating, or if they're trying to be more receptive and accept you in the society. I think the key word here is acceptance. If you feel accepted in the country and society that you live in. I would give an example of a friend who is currently is a member of the association. He's trying to find an apartment. He's from Cameroon as well. And in this past 1 month, I think I've called about 40 house owners on his behalf, because I speak Croatian first. That helps in a way. And the first question they normally ask is, oh, so where is he from? Is he, the moment I tell them he's from Cameroon, they're like, oh, do you know what? I've had bad experience with this person or with that person. And these are the little things. Even though he's an active member of the society, he works here, he studies here, he pays his taxes just like every other person. And not being able to find the primary thing in you know, being able to survive. One thing we all need is accommodation, and even that he's not able to find. That's one thing that in a way discourages you to integrate properly in the society, if you keep thinking that, you know what, the society I'm living in anyway wouldn't accept me, you know, in these things. And it's just like with the language as well. Learning the language, you feel that the the system can make it, let's say, easier, in the sense that this language courses can be cheaper. The cheapest you can find is 700 euros for a semester, which is actually very expensive. And if you're not able to learn the language, how are you supposed to integrate in a society? We're also talking about employment here, where when you go for interviews at times, and when people find out that you're, you know, from an African country, the interview practically ends in 5 minutes. They don't even want to know, are you qualified? What did you study? What can you offer the company? It's all limited to how you look, where you're from, how you speak, what your accent is. And this may maybe sound banal to people, but this things like accommodation, employment, learning the language is actually what, you know, makes integration, let's say, easier. And it needs to come from both sides. That's one thing that we all must accept, that even though we're trying, maybe the foreigner is trying to, you know, adapt to everything. It's always, you know, difficult at the beginning, as Florette said. But then I feel like, you know, most people are trying, and they need to feel that the society, the system, the administration is also doing the same, that they're not putting more barriers in making your life difficult in living here, that after you, for example, after you finish the faculty, you can't find a job, or you can't even, I don't know, volunteer somewhere, let's say, for example, just because people, keep rejecting you or there are more barriers, and this type of things make, integration difficult, and this is why I definitely agree with the sentence that it needs to come from both parties. It's not just, one person trying, and it's always expected of the foreigner to try. Usually people ask, oh, have you learned the language? You'll find a job once you learn the language. You can do that, and then after that, there's still the other obstacle of the employer actually wanting to employ you, even though he knows you know the language, he knows that you're qualified, but then there's something, always stopping it. And this can be seen even with daily things like going to the shop and finding a shampoo for your hair texture, or finding a foundation, for your skin color. When you go into the shop, you feel that every product that you see doesn't, suit you, or it's not, it's not for, let's say, people of colored skin or black people, and you just, in a way, you're discouraged, and you start thinking, oh, you know what? I think the society is actually not trying to accept me here. Maybe I should move somewhere else. And everything just comes together eventually, and you just, as much as you're trying, the system and the administration also needs to try. It needs to go both ways, definitely.
Wow, thank you so much. I can relate with everything that you said. Like, I was like, yes, when you talked about the hair and the texture of your hair and like the foundation, and also about accommodation and things like that. I've also experienced some of those issues, and I think most of us have. So I think this is like a self-reflection moment for all of us as well. Like, how are we accepting to other people, and how do we view this topic of integration? So thank you so much for that insight. And I will stick to this topic a little bit more in terms of integration, and I'll also leave this question to you, Abby. You can also introduce yourself and explain a little bit about your personal story. How do you view integration as well? Like, have you gone through some of the things that Hamidat mentioned, and what are the activities that we as Africans can do to integrate into the society? I think Hamidad mentioned a few of them, but what do you think the society can do also to help us, accept us into the society, because we are here? Thank you.
Hello. Okay. Thank you very much for that wonderful question. Good evening, everyone. My name is Abi Job. I'm from the Gambia. I'm a fifth-year student of Sociology and English Language and Literature at the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. And of course, I'm one of the co-founders of the Pan-African Association in Croatia. Coming to your question, integrating personally for me here was not easy. I don't think, or I want to believe it has never been easy for anyone. At the beginning, but I use my own ways. Like I used certain different tools in order for me to at least, try my best to be as much integrated as possible. And I think one of the easiest things for me, from my experience, was I was the only black student in the entire faculty. So I didn't even have a choice. And I remember coming here, this little skinny guy was a very shy person. So talking to people was very difficult. And one of the things I always mention is that at the university level, there was zero integration. I was not, I didn't have any sort of, how do you call it? When you first arrive, enroll at the university, somebody showing you around, telling you, like, explaining certain things to you. That was something that I never experienced, sadly. So I had to figure everything out by myself. And before I realized, a lot of things were too late for me. Part of those things were me repeating a year 2 times, because when I came, I couldn't tell the difference between an elective subject and a compulsory subject at the university. So I just attend classes and then go through the literature. And when I realized that, okay, this one is in English, or this is by an English author, or this material is in English, then I'll stay here. So before I realized, at the end of the year, I realized that all of the courses that I was attending were more of elective courses than compulsory courses. So I couldn't even move to the next year because of that. And But then after that, realizing all those mistakes, even though I learned most of that, all by myself, I started making friends. And I think I always tell people one of the best ways for you to, settle down and be a lot more comfortable is making friends, locals, who can help you around and also help you practice your Croatian language. So I started making friends from here, from college, and then from there we started, practicing my Croatian with them, although most of them would like to talk to you in English. But then that was one of the tools that I used, to improve my Croatian, because I feel like 1 year wasn't enough for me to sit in a classroom and then listen to lectures in Croatian and understand everything. And also there's this part of my integration that there's this part that was always missing. Seeing somebody that I can identify myself to, somebody from my continent, somebody that looks like me, somebody who shares a similar experience, somebody that can advise me or I can advise, and that give you some sort of a sense of comfort. Having somebody around you that is going through the same thing has been through the same thing that you're going through, and having people. Then I started meeting Africans. I remember my first week here, I met Florette and Nuria, and and then I was super happy. And I started the first thing was, oh my God, black people, And then I was like, can I have a picture with you guys? And then that was the first day we met. Since then, we've always been hanging out together. We share experiences, and look at where we are today. We formed the first Pan-African Association of Croatia. So. Integration is very difficult, and then I think one of the mistakes also that I would like to mention is that most people make is, once you get here, the first people that you want to look out for is people that look like you, people who speak your language, which can be kind of a barrier for you to be fully integrated. That's a nice thing, hanging out with people from your continent, from your country, speaking your languages, but sometimes when you overindulge yourself, it kind of limits you from making connections with the locals or the people that are from here, because you wanted to be that comfortable around the people that you share similar experiences with, people that speak your languages, or that kind of give you that comfort that you don't want to step outside of. And I noticed that earlier, and then, as much as I'm connected to all of you here, probably like most of you are already my best friends, but then I also try that much to be connected to people that are from here, people that I share the same classroom with. Maya is a perfect example of that. We share the same class. We attended the same lectures. We studied the same course at the university, and we've always been talking in Croatian. I think it's just recently that we started speaking in English, but we've always talking, and it's a very natural thing to me now. Like it's not a problem at all. So language, it's one of the the ways that you can, and then like Hamida mentioned some of the problems that you can have, like the double way integration thing. You can try your best. I think all of us, that's the first thing that we always want to do. Try our best to learn the language, try our best to make connection, try our best to understand the culture and the lifestyle here. But then if the other side isn't trying, it's limiting you to be fully integrated, and that is a problem that we are still facing.
Well, thank you so much for that insight. That makes a lot of sense, and I can attest to that as well. Like, it's very important to make connections with people from different countries, and I do notice that with most Croatians, they're a little bit more accommodating. So that's also a good thing, and I do appreciate that as well. So, and it's also good to like keep the people in your space or in your corner, people that can accept you. So I think that was the end of the first segment where we just talked about general issues. So now we're going to dive deeper into the issues that we face as Africans. Like what Florette was talking about, the health insurance, the language, and things like that. So every panelist has prepared a little short summary. I know it's hard to summarize because you could have like all day talking about these things, but I would actually give everyone like 5 minutes. So don't over talk. I know it's hard, and I will just cut you a little bit. I don't, if you're talking too much. So yeah. So I think for now, I will have. I think I'll have Hamidat. You can start in terms of your topic, which is about. Let me see, language and student rights and such. Thank you.
Thank you once again. So in terms of language and student rights, I think these are very two connected topics, because here when you want to enroll at the university, most courses are in Croatian actually. And usually they tell you, oh, no worries, you'll catch up. You can learn Croatian for 6 months and you can enroll at the faculty. Don't do it. When they tell you to do that, don't do it. Because in my experience, learning Croatian for just 6 months and enrolling at the faculty, it really makes your life difficult in the sense that you're learning, I don't know, for example, you're studying economics or accounting, you have terminologies that are extremely difficult that you need to know the language for at least, let's say, 2 years before you can actually attend a full course in Croatian. And the problem here is the language. Most of the time, you have to go to Croaticum. This is a school where it's like the recognized institutes for learning Croatian language. And like I mentioned earlier, the cheapest semester is 700 euros. And if you're expected to, let's say, learn the language before you enroll at the faculty, you need to, let's say, attend 4 semesters, which amounts to a huge amount before you can even enroll at the faculty, which you still need to pay for. And this is extremely challenging for, let's say, students, because if you already have that obstacle at the beginning, because most of the classes, even though, for example, I studied French and Spanish at the faculty here, and I was expecting most of my classes to be in French and Spanish, but it was mostly in Croatian. And even though I attended 3 semesters of Croaticum, it still wasn't enough. I had to study, let's say, 5 times more than the regular students, because there's the problem of learning, learning the course, which is already difficult, and then having to listen to the class in Croatian and writing your assignments in Croatian, doing your test and everything in Croatian. And another problem with enrolling at the faculty here, which is the process of nostrification. When you bring your diploma from, let's say, any African country in general, they don't have the system that equally translates, not translates, but equally gives the same amount of scores that they would give to, let's say, someone who is coming from Italy or from a European country. And most people find themselves having, let's say, good grades back home, from, let's say, an African country before coming here. And then when they go through that process of nostrification, their diploma is just degraded to something basic, something minimum, and then they're not able to get the right amount of scores or points that are needed to enroll at the faculty. And on the topic of student rights, we're also talking about having equal right for all international students. If you're an international student, you should have the right to live at the dormitory, but it's quite different, and there's no consistency here, and that's what bothers us the most, because they use that word international student, but then it's different for third country nationals. When you're from, I don't know, a third, let's say, for example, you're an African student here, in most cases, you don't have the right to live at the dorm. Previously, you were not even allowed to work, even though you're an international student and you have a student right and you have the student contract, but then you can only, I don't know, go to the library and borrow books with it, and that's basically it. Even the student restaurant, which is, let's say, it's cheaper and we should all be able to eat there if we're an international student. In most cases, third country international students, because I always have to add the third country national, because when we say international students, it actually doesn't cover everyone. It just covers students from European countries living here, and they're the ones who have, let's say, the equal rights as a Croatian student here. And then you're not able to live at the dorm, you're not able to eat at the restaurant. Previously, you couldn't work, and you're expected to pay full tuition. I once called the Ministry of Education and I asked, where am I supposed to get the funds from? Because if I'm not allowed to work, I'm not allowed to live at the dorm, it means that I have to rent an apartment, which I have to pay monthly. If I'm not allowed to eat at the student restaurant, it means I have to buy my own groceries and cook, which is even more expensive. I didn't get an answer. Usually the answer is, but giving you equal rights would mean he said, and I quote, he said, it would mean discrimination to all other students because you didn't earn it. And that's you know, usually the problem where you feel like you have to, why do you have to earn it? If other international students have access to this thing, why shouldn't you have access to the same thing? And we're also talking about when we're talking about the language, like Abby said, it's also very important that when you learn the language, the people have confidence in you, that they're willing to be patient and allow you to speak in that language and practice with them. I find myself in situations where even though people know that you speak the language, you understand, they mostly want to speak in English to practice their own English, and then you find yourself in that circle where you actually never learn the language because nobody wants to speak in Croatian with you. I mean, it's good. I know people want it to be easier for you, and that's why they're speaking in that language with you. But then at the same time, you should be able to, people should, have that confidence in wanting to practice with you and, allow you to learn the language. But I feel like if I delve deeper into this topic, we'll be here the whole day. So I will, give the ground to someone else to speak. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Those were very valid issues that you raised there, and it's such a complex topic to talk about. I know that you can speak on it the whole day, but yeah, I agree with that. I feel like integration is also a two-way process, and like what you were mentioning, as much as we want to practice Croatian, they also want to practice English, so we have to find a balance somewhere. So thank you for that. I'll move on to the next speaker. I'll ask this to Florette. So in terms of one of the issues that we face here as international students, or Africans living in Croatia specifically, we face this challenge about health insurance. So this is a topic that I'm sure most Croatians don't know what we're facing and why this is an issue. So can you please just explain that for us?
Thank you again for the question, Fadzi. And yes, the health insurance. We have to know that before, when you arrive to Croatia, you need to pay 1 year before even being in Croatia of health assurance. So they ask to everyone to pay. I think now it's a little bit more than 6,000 kuna, almost 1,000 euro. So even if you are not living in the country, you need to pay for 1 year before that you were living in the country. Let's say I was living in Cameroon, I come here today, and then I have to pay 1 year before being here in Croatia. If I don't pay, I cannot activate the health assurance. So you pay the 6,000 and something, and starting from there, you pay every month about 579, yes, almost 600 kuna per month. So the first year when you arrive to Croatia, you need to prepare at least almost 2,000 euro just for the health insurance. I think this is a lot for anyone, for foreigners or even for Croatian people, but I don't think that they pay that. Maybe you will edify us more on that. So yes, that's when you go to MOOP here, when you need to renew your permanent stay or your residency, they ask you to open you have to open to have your assurance at Izazovi. So they don't give you the opportunity to go to another company to have your health assurance, to maybe find some cheaper option You have to be at Herzog to get your stay. So you cannot avoid it even if you want. When I came here 10 years ago, the price was, I think it was 350 kuna. It was almost 50 euros per month. But since few years, I don't know what is happening, the prices are increasing every year. But we don't know why. So every year the prices are increasing, and you are asking them, based on what? I mean, we would like to know why the prices are not constant, because in maybe next year it won't be 570 kuna, but it will be 600, and then the year 1 year later, increasing and increasing and increasing. We don't have any answer about that, and when you call them, when you ask them, they say it's the law. And we need to know that for students have to pay that fully price. So if you're a student, you have to pay. If you're a foreigner, I mean from third country, you have to pay that price. Croatian people, I think that they don't have to pay. The government takes care of that. But yes, as Hamidat was saying, you have to pay the fully amount of health assurance. You need to pay the fully tuition fees, and basically we don't have any advantage being students or foreigners living in Croatia. It's really difficult. And yeah, that's almost that. So we asked. I had a friend who asked. We asked together to the ministry, like, why do they ask us to pay like €1,000 before when we arrive here? Is it in case we cannot pay? Let's say I can't pay tomorrow. I have a problem with. I can't pay. Are they going to take? Are they going to use that money to cover? They say no. You have to pay it, and that's it. And no explanation. And the explanation that they give to us mostly is the law. To je zákon. So Cedric is going to add something.
I'm not going to take
it.
too much time, but just to complete what my friend Florette said, it's good to understand that the healthcare system in Croatia, the way it works, is a participatory healthcare insurance fund, I would say it this way, compared to America or to Cameroon, where it's out of the pocket, so you pay for the service. In Croatia, it's mostly the government take from your salary to pay for the health insurance of those who are active, meaning working, and those who are non-active, meaning non-working, invalid, and so on. So they take a percentage, I guess, around 16 to 70% from your salary, and then the employer also pays somewhere around 16 to 17. So that makes around, I don't know, if you have a salary of 6,000 kuna per month, it's around 900 kuna to 1,000 kuna a month. And this is a bit the way this functions. If you remember well, when we were at the integration forum, which happened 3 months ago, there was a Ministry of Health there as well, and this same question was asked. I think it was asked by Abi, and the answer was the same thing as the law. We understand the way it works. You know, there's a ministry who is supposed to lead the political view of the government by creating rules about healthcare. Every citizen in the country needs to be covered because healthcare is costly and it's not easy to pay. Even if you have a good salary and a lot of money, it's better to go through usually a healthcare insurance. But what we don't understand is why there's no liberty. Izazovi is only a company. It's a national healthcare company. It's not part of political body of the country. So they are a company, not to make any publicity, Alliance company, Croatia Osigurania, and whatever and so on. Why the law cannot be liberalized as in many other countries where people come and there's a minimum, because there's always a minimal I would say, insurance, which cover basic cost of consultation at the doctor and everything. And if you want more, maybe a private room in the hospital, maybe to be only consulted by the senior doctors and everything, then you buy a private. No, in Croatia it's different. You get a house or basic insurance, we cover for everything. If you don't want to pay 10 kuna at every consultation, then you pay 70 kuna more per month. Maybe this is a good system according to the economical way of working of the country. But when we look at countries which are around, I personally literally think that it's better to have 1,000 of companies that offer the same service and cover you for the basic insurance. Doesn't matter the price. They will take the price they want to make, but which is of course limited by the country, by the law of the country. Cannot be 1,000 kuna a month or 10,000 kuna a month. And then the private is everything else: dental healthcare, I don't know, aesthetics, elective surgery, whatever, consultation at the senior doctors, and so on and so on and so on. So we are only asking for that liberty. And as well, when they ask you to pay retrospectively 1 year back, this doesn't happen if you come from an EU country. If you come from an EU country, oh, who cares, it's fine. You come from a friend country, we have bilateral agreement. You come in the system and you pay the 500 kuna that is asked every month. But if you come from a third country national, if you're a third country national, then you have to pay €1,000 from a year before. What that amount of money cover, you cannot know. It's just for your inscription, so we can call it like this. To be registered in the registry of healthcare insurance, you pay that amount of money. But till now, nobody knows why, even the Ministry of Health, which is kind of strange for us. Thank you.
And just to add something.
Oh, everyone's adding
No,
something.
about the
I'm joking. Yeah.
because this 6,000 kuna for me, it's, okay. You have to know that if you don't renew your health assurance on time, then when you come back, you'll have to pay again 6,000 kuna before, like, you were never here in Croatia. Yes. So and then after you paid, then you start to pay regularly, month by month, every month. So you'll never miss to renew.
That's a big one. You also wanted to add something, Hamida?
Usually the argument for that is, what if something happens to you in those 30 days while you're waiting for you to get your temporary stay? And that's the argument they're always given, that what if, for example, someone has a chronic disease, but in most cases, they could resolve it by, I don't know, checking our medical records to see, you know, who is actually, you know, let's say chronically sick before coming into the country. But most of us, you know, actually we're, let's say, mostly healthy, and people who come here can provide, I don't know, a history of their medical records, and they can base it on that. If at all they want us to pay for those 30 days while we're waiting for our temporary residence to be issued, because this is usually the excuse they're given for that. But while we're speaking of international students, I just wanted to mention the issue of counting 1 year as 6 months for international students. This is something I feel like we have to mention. If you live here and your status, you have a student status, let's say, for example, you were studying for 10 years, that's only considered as 5 years in the law. Eventually, when you want to apply for, let's say, the permanent stay, even after living here for 10 years, that's, you only have, after 10 years, the right to apply for a permanent stay, because in the law, it's only considered as living here for 5 years instead of 10 years. And this is something that most people don't know about. Usually when we mention this, it's like, wow, why is it counted as 6 months instead of a whole full year? But this is also one thing that we don't have an answer to. Usually when we ask, we don't know the logic behind it. We even tried going by the academic year to see maybe one academic year is 6 months, but it's actually 9 months. So Abby, you've been here for, you know, a long time, and you also know that you having the student, you know, status is always considered as 6 months. And this is one thing that I really hope that, you know, it will really change, or that we can, you know, do something about it, because it also makes integration hard. If you stayed here for, I don't know, 12 years, and that's only considered 6 years, and after those 6 years, you can only just then apply for, let's say, some kind of long-term stay. At that point, you just feel like, why should I even apply? I can always move to somewhere else where I can, you know, apply for the same status there and, you know, start over again. So I just wanted to mention this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, it makes the whole process a little discouraging when you look at it that way. On that note, I would like maybe, Abby, for you to talk about the issue of discrimination. Do you think that it plays a part in maybe all these issues that we talked about? What do you think about that topic?
I'm not expecting anyone to agree with me, but I think yes. So discrimination is something that we all face here on a daily basis, and sometimes it's tough, you know. And I had a lot of experiences where I was profiled racially. I used not to use that word before. I don't know, for some reason, maybe I just try to be too polite or take my situation very lightly, and things would happen to me. I'll be 100% sure that it happened to me because of the way I look. But then I'll just dismiss it and say, okay, it can happen to anyone. Like for instance, in 2015, I was attacked by some people, some guys here. And it was a very horrible experience, coming from a country where I was never exposed to crime, where nobody would attack me for doing nothing. I was shocked, and I wanted to go back home immediately, because I'm like, if I'm going to die, I'd rather die in my family, with my, you know, being being surrounded by my family, than to be killed for no reason. Or if I'm going to die, I'd rather die, you know, with a good reason. So it was a very bad experience, and then I've lived several more similar experiences. And then one of the problems I had, and I know a lot of us have or had, is talking about these experiences. Is it because of the fear, or, you know, the lack of security, that we don't want to talk about these experiences? And I feel like talking about them can be very helpful. And I remember a few times I was asked to be interviewed about my experience when it comes to racism here. I'm like, no, I don't want anybody to hate me. I don't want to be a target. That came from a place of fear. And now it does not matter who believes me. What I've lived, I've lived. What I've experienced, I've experienced. And then I'm not looking for anybody's acceptance of my story, but that is my experience. You take it or leave it. And that was the time I started talking about my experiences. When I was attacked in 2015, I was right at the police station where somebody called me and I said, oh, I'm calling from this media. Would you like to talk about your experience? I said, no, don't call me. Who are you? I don't know you. Don't call me again. I was really scared. And then I went to give my statement at the police station. Before I leave, one of my friends who was with me at the hospital sent me the link of one of the news talking about the story. It was very fast. And then I think that gave me a lot of anxiety. For a week, I lived in the dark. You know, my window wasn't opened. You know, I was just scared for my life. And I've never lived that before. I live in a country where, in order for somebody to just come to you and then said, with a knife, can I remove your brain and pee on it? You don't take that serious, because I just laughed. And then in Croatian, I said, try it. Because I didn't take them serious. And then they were serious, you know. So a friend of mine who was with me tried to step in between us, and then they hit him, and he started bleeding from his ear. And that was when I realized this was serious. And then he was like, run, Abby, run. I'm like, no, where I am from, you don't run if you don't do anything wrong, you know. And he forced me to run, you know. And that was the most embarrassing moment, but I think it saved my life probably. And we started running, and then fortunately they were arrested, and I had to go to court with them. That alone was a trauma of its own. And then like being in a courtroom and being forced to sit next to the two guys who tried to kill you. At some point I tried to give up, and I told the judge that I've forgiven them. Can you just let them go? I'm tired of coming here. He said, no, if you don't come the next sitting, we have to call the police to come get you, you know. So I don't know how that court case ended. It never ended because I didn't receive any notification or a resolution. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that it reached that level. That means that we can't be scared just because we look different, just because we are a minority here and somebody used it as an advantage to harm us, shouldn't make us have that fear of not talking about our experiences. Whether someone is going to believe us or not shouldn't make us feel that, have the fear of not talking about our experiences, because you don't know whose life you're going to save the next. When you talk about your experience, somebody else can learn from it, and that only help you, that helps a lot. So discrimination, not just only on the streets. I think the easiest way personally that I dealt with it was on the street, because when somebody, even like yesterday, maybe he thought I was Brazilian, and then he yelled at me and then called me the N-word, and I just looked at him and smiled. If your intention is to activate some kind of a negative energy out of me, you're going to fail, and then I always feel like that makes them feel worse, feel bad about themselves, if that's your intention, I'm not the one, I'm not going to be mad at you, I'll only smile at you and then just look the other side. I've always done that. But for instance, if it happens in a school environment, that's an academic society. That is something that cannot be tolerated. Thankfully, I've never, except once when I started in the student restaurant, and then this group of students were looking at me and laughing. That was very uncomfortable. And at first I wasn't sure they were laughing at me, but I realized that all of them turned around and looked at me and then laughed again. And I went to them. I'm like, I am fully part of this society. This is an academic society. I don't care what they study in. I don't care which homes they are from, but that is something that I can't just ignore. And I went to them, I said, okay, I'm not here to pick a fight, but you guys are making me feel very uncomfortable. Imagine you live in another country where you don't understand the language, and a group of people look at you and then laugh. How would you feel? And they apologize, and I move on. And the reason why I did that was not for them to apologize, but probably the next time they want to do in a similar situation, they'll think about their interaction with me, and that will stop them from doing. And so sometimes I think the best way for us to deal with these situations is amicably, dealing with problems like those discrimination or even racism. Most of the time, the only reason why I kind of respond to people, or why I even react, is not because I want an apology, or not because I want to make you feel guilty for your action, but just to show you how uncomfortable that is, so that the next time you meet the next person that looks like me, you'll think twice, at least if you're smart.
Wow. Those are very hostile situations that you talked about, and it's something for us all to think about. How do we respond in such situations? And I think most of us here from Africa, we have experienced those kind of situations. And the funny part is when we try to explain these situations, a lot of people, when they're receiving it, they're like, not here, not in Croatia. I've heard this a million times. Everyone says, no, doesn't happen. They want to remove from your experience. But like Abby was saying, this is our own personal experiences, and we don't need anyone to validate them more, because it's something that has happened to us. So it's unfortunate that it's still happening in this, in this time and age and in this country, but these are situations that are happening, and thank you for highlighting those situations. And moving forward, this will be to Lucia. So my question for you is, what do you think about integration and migration from a governmental level, from your history and working with a lot of migrants and a lot of people from all aspects of life? What do you think about migration? What do you think about the situation right now in Croatia? Yes.
Thank you. And thank you all for really sharing your powerful stories and knowledge and insights. I would say, and I will echo some things people have already said, if we are looking from a governmental level, the way we are approaching the issue of migration is that we are actually not thinking, the government and the structures here are not actually thinking coherently about it. We have no migration policies, the integration policies that exist. So no migration policies that encompass all the, different reasons and all these, the different populations that migrate to Croatia. That doesn't exist. And thinking of integration policies, they are mostly targeting those that existed because none of them are right now valid on a political level. So those that existed, usually the measures in them were targeting people who had refugee status here, and not. So it wasn't. This is what Cedric was referring to also before. So there weren't, comprehensive measures for other people who migrated, so other newcomers arrived to this society. No vision on how to actively include people in society. So that's one problem. And the other problem is what Hamidat was talking about before. All of the measures, or most of them, were targeting people on an individual level. So there should be language courses and this and that for individuals to integrate, but there were no measures on the societal level of, okay, what should society do and in which way should the society change? What should we do to have acceptance, as Hamidat was saying, and in which kind of way acceptance? Is it just this kind of passive tolerance where you kind of accept people who are here but you view them as somehow, different and don't really understand them? Or is it this kind of active acceptance where we have dialogue, where we have moments within our society where we, even publicly, how can I say, have events that, for example, I will give a concrete example. So if we have more and more Muslims living here, then, we can talk about public holidays and celebration of that. Croatia's context is a bit, it's good in the sense that we have had Muslim communities here for, centuries already. And we have some moments and some policies for national minority protection rights, so we could, also encompass that measures to work on the societal level of acceptance. That's one level, and working on structural racism that you all have basically mentioned. All these things are structural, in a sense, structural barriers for people. So this is something that on a governmental level has to change, and I'm not sure how it would. Last thing I would say is that Croatia even has a history of, in a way, of anti-colonialism, which is very interesting, and we don't use that history at all. So we had the non-aligned movement, students from different African countries moving here, living here as students, as workers, and so on. Different measures that existed at that time that are now not used at all and could be used. And I always like to mention this point because I think it's very important. Like during the time that Belgium had still, human zoos, like what, 60, 70 years ago, Croatia and countries in the Yugoslavia had protests supporting Patrice Lumumba. So it's a history that we actually should be using on a governmental level, in our education, in our policy measures, but we don't. And it's very tragic. And so in that sense, yeah, we can talk a bit later about the future, but these are some things that could be done in order to have an improvement within the system. Yeah.
Okay, yes, thank you so much for that insightful view. So it shows that these policies were in place in the past, but that is a question that we need to ask, like, why are they not in place now? So I think this, yes, we do need answers from the government. They need to answer us, like, what's happening with that. So thank you for sharing. So just to end the segment, the second block that we were just talking about, different things that we're facing as Africans, I would actually ask maybe Cedric to just give us like maybe a summary of what we all talked about for those maybe that just entered just now, but maybe a brief summary or something that you'd like to add to the topics that we just discussed.
Thank you so much for the question. To resume what we said, we talked about student rights, we talked about insurance, access to healthcare, and also the rights of living. Maybe what I will emphasize is what already Mbida said, and this is a question also I asked at the government representative at the included conference that happened 2 months ago. And the question was, does Croatia really want to become a multicultural country? And the answer that I've received was yes. But to my opinion and to the opinion of those who are in my shoes, I think it's a political answer. Simply because if we look at the law is not on the side to help people who come from other countries to easily integrate the community in Croatia. I will take a simple example. 4 years ago, when you visit every country, you need a purpose of visiting the country. In Croatia, there was a law saying if you do volunteer in an association, you can have it as a purpose of staying in the country, and this was valid for a year. Today, if you apply on purpose of staying in Croatia with a motive of volunteering in an association, you get 3 months, which is renewable 1 time. That is 6 months. So, and the process itself takes 6 months. So by the time you get the ID, the process is done, the time is done. So you have to be looking for a new process of a new purpose of staying. So in my sense, I don't see it much. The same as long-term residency and permanent stays. If you want to apply for permanent stay and transit from student stays to a permanent stay, it becomes a bit harder. And then people do things and then they call them illegals or whatever. Well, we all have to find a way to survive. If you study in the country for 6 years and it's considered only 3 years, this doesn't really encourage the answer saying that the country want to become multicultural and accept other third country living in the country. So in general, this is what I could say on this question. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that summary of what we were just talking about. And I think it's true, like everything, when there are changes that are meant to be happening, it is a hierarchy. So it comes from the top to the bottom. So if we're expecting some changes, then there should be changes in the law and policies. So that comes from a governmental level. So this is something that we expect the government to look into, and hopefully if that changes, that means that other people will also have a different viewpoint, and change will be put in place. So now we're going to just move on to the third and final block. Thank you for listening. So I think I will just ask this question to everyone. Maybe we can just go around. Maybe with Hamidat you can start. In terms of, we've talked about our problems, we've talked about the things that we have experienced in summary. But I would just like you to maybe give us something, like maybe there's a rainbow at the end of everything that has happened. You know, we just are hoping for solutions. So are there any like recommendations that you have, or something that you see in the future that can change? Do you have anything that maybe you just want to add on? And yeah, that would be good.
I mean, definitely there have been positive changes. I would, say for an example, when I came 5 years ago and I walked into the Ministry of Internal Affairs, no one spoke English in there. And the woman working at the counter, she was asking me, how come you don't speak Croatian, even though she can see on my passport that I just came a week ago. These things are changing. When you go there now, they have people who speak English, who know the policies, and of course, there are only 2 people working in the entire section, in the entire foreigner section. Things could be changed in that sense, that when they could employ more people who are also English speakers, and just in general, I would want us to be more included in decisions that are concerning us. I think this is something I would like to suggest. I feel that most people who make these laws, these policies, I wouldn't say they don't have an idea of what we're experiencing, but I think most of these things are decided based on their point of view. we need to be more, they need to include us. It's not that we don't want to be included in this, in the process of making these decisions, but in general, it'd be nice if we had a representative in these bodies, in these governmental positions that represent us, that, you know, can share our first-hand experiences and what needs to be changed. Because I know usually they say, yes, but the law is in place, you just don't know your rights. It's not that we don't know. We know, you know, our rights, we know what is written in the law. It's just what is written in the law favors them, doesn't favor us. So it's more of just, you know, including us in general in this policy making, and adopting an immigration policy, because as Lucia said, there is not, currently we don't have an existing immigration policy, which if we don't have something to go back to, something we can refer to as a concrete law of like immigration policies, this thing would just go round and round in circles and it wouldn't change. So these are the two suggestions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question to Lucia.
Yeah, I will definitely just echo what Hamidat said. There has to be a change in the way this government and governments that follow, but also structures below, you know, cities and so on, view migration. I think we are really at that point where we have to really see that migration is just the reality of today. It's not going to change unless you put, you know, military at the border and start shooting at people. You know, that's the only alternative I see. So if we're not doing that, unfortunately, the way Europe looks, we might be doing that, who knows? But if we shift our mindsets, then, and we work on having policies that are fair and that do not perpetrate these structural barriers, then we might have a shot, you know, of a future that already looks troubling with climate change and all the issues that are stemming from it, economical issues and so on. As Hamidat was saying, things are changing, and I see that things change best when I work with a lot of refugee activists in the area of, you know, forced migration, and things are changing by people advocating for themselves and pushing and not stopping to push. And this is where all my hopes lie in, you know, and that's why I think it's so important to have associations like PADUH, and where people are, you know, just collectively working on trying to better a situation, their situations, not only their situations, but the society as a whole, with, you know, improvement of their own situations. I will end it here and leave space for others.
I also think that things are changing. I remember when I came 10 years ago, I almost fell down because I felt the pressure of the looks on me, because I think I was the only one, the only black person around. But now when I walk around, I see some people they don't even notice me. I kind of sometimes miss that. I'm kidding. But yes, people are getting more used to us, and I think there is a lot of work that has to be done about educating people. I think that many people think that black people, we are all robbers, or we are all poor, or we are all, maybe they think that we are here and we are going to harm the country. And maybe that's why, I don't know, they feel like there needs to be, you know, with the same problem of finding apartments. When you are a football player, they don't make any problems, even if you are black. They know that you have money and you're gonna pay. But if you say, oh, I'm a student, I'm an African student, I'm not sure. So, but yes, I believe things are going to change. Things change. It's just the normal way of life. And I have to be positive. I hope the law will change, and that it's going to be easier for us and for the future generations to integrate the country.
On my side, I think the same as all of you, what you have said, guys, but I would like to emphasize on one thing. The nature has aura of emptiness, and with now Croatia accessing to the Schengen area, we already have seen it. You know, a lot of young people are leaving in Croatia to go in more to the west, and this is what is going to be happening with this move of Croatia entering the Schengen. This means that a lot of people from third country nationals are going to come to Croatia to fill in this emptiness. I think this is the right time for Croatia to really try to have that policy on migration set on, not just because people are going to be coming, but also because Croatia need to find a way to get a benefits from out of this. Croatia need to find a way how to use this movement of person coming, who want to stay, who want to move further, how to accommodate all of that, and how to ease the process for everyone. And of course, inclusion is the key point. We have to be included in the process of making those policies in order to find what is right for everyone, for the country benefit, and also for the people who are migrating. Thank you.
What was the question again?
The question was, what do you think about the future?
Okay, so I am very optimistic. First of all, I am super grateful that we are having forums like this. Before, I've never been, I live here for 9 years now. I've never been a part of this kind of conversations. And I think that is a huge step. Because one of the things I notice here is, if we have concerns, we don't talk about it. For them, whoever they are, everything is fine with us. But then having these conversations, talking about the problems, we don't even have to have expectations, you know, just for the fact that we're talking about it, it's making them become aware of the situation. So are they going to take a step? That's up to them. But then us having these kind of forums, and then I am very happy with the partnership we have with CMS, because this year alone, I personally cannot count how many kind of these forums that I've attended where whether it is part of my personal capacity building, because I feel like most of these issues that we are facing here, we need to have a certain amount of knowledge, a certain amount of education, and a certain amount of approach in order for us to deal with them. We don't have to just wake up and say, oh, let's make a protest because somebody was attacked, or let's go, destroy, let's say the police station because the police, kind of violated somebody or things like that. But then equipping ourselves with these tools, these knowledges, and then familiarizing ourselves with a lot of situations only give us a lot of strength for us to address issues without losing it, for us to have conversations and be listened to. And I think that is very important. And I'm glad that we are having these conversations. I've lived here, like I said, for 9 years, and I've never been involved in situations like this. And that's a huge step. And I'm hoping that conversations like this are going to continue to happen. We're having a live stream right now on our Facebook page. Only God knows who is going to have access to that, even though we don't have all the people that are invited here, but then it's out there, it's on the internet, anybody can see that, and I think that's, that alone is something to be fully satisfied. So hopefully we'll have more and more conversations like this, and the future is only bright.
Wow, thank you so much. And change is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. So we are thankful for everyone that joined us. And it's very important for us to have such discussions like what you said. So this was the closing of the third section of our talk. And I don't know if anyone else has something to
I just would like to give a special recognition to Nadia from ENAR. Yes. Honestly, this year being able to participate in this project that was that you granted to us has been. It was a huge step for our association, and it really brought us out there. I'm really sorry that you were not able to attend the event that we had in, when did we do in September, but we had a lot of Croatians, and it's just involving the local community in our activity, and we're really thankful for this opportunity, and we're so glad that you're here. We're so grateful to have you here, and we're thankful to your association as well, and thank you so much. So
We also thank you to all of you who are present in the room tonight. Thank you for giving us your time and for bringing, your positive energy here, as well to CMS for all the support since the beginning of this journey. And as Abi said, we just hope the future is bright. Thank you.
Thank you so much. But we're not done yet. So before you leave, we're going to keep this floor open. This is the section where we can ask you, the audience, if you have any questions or if you have any comments, suggestions. This is your time to also share with us. What do you think about this? Do you have anything else to add on? Anyone can add on, and I can give you the mic.
If I can just add, maybe Nadia can tell us just a few words if you want, or maybe that can be after the audience session, however. Yeah, okay. And just one thing I wanted to also, that I forgot to apologize in the name of Senada Šelo Šabić, who was supposed to speak here today instead of me, but she got sick, she has high fever, so that's why I'm here and not her, because she was sick, so I just stepped in for a minute. Yes, thank you. Abi has the mic for questions.
First of all, maybe I'd like to have a round of applause from us, everybody, because I think you had a really a good contribution, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing all your testimonies. I think they're a really big deal. As Abi said, it's really empowering also for me, as a woman from Croatia, seeing that the country is moving in a better direction. I have one just comment and then also one question for you. First, the comment would just be why this is empowering for me to see as well is because I come from a mixed family. So my father is Bosniak, my mother is Croat. And just seeing all of these experiences that you face, I think it's important to have in mind when what Lucia was saying, the history of Croatia, and even though we had this anti-colonial, at least rhetoric, if not really a deep culture, in Yugoslav times, I think what the war and the ethno-nationalist rhetoric did to the culture in Croatia, I mean, wars are just a sickly phenomenon, and it can really change people and culture overnight. Unfortunately, for example, my father, who is Bosniak, his passport, and for my whole family, for a lot of years, we had a denial of even granting, documents until. As you, Cedric, said, in Croatia, it's all about connections, it's all about veze, and until he came to the public office, and cursed out a lot of people, then, things got settled. But I think this is also a reality of a lot of, Serbian people, Bosniak people, and just people from all around, former Yugoslavia. And it's a shame that even 30 years after, this is the legacy of ethno-nationalist policies. But it's inspiring to see people coming and just kind of smashing this kind of policy and this kind of a vision of a state that doesn't have to be nationalistic and that can create space for others. I'm just interested in what is your perspective on the fact that I feel in the past year or year and a half or so, the Croatian government has, or at least the tourist boards and those kinds of bodies have put a really big emphasis on so-called digital nomads. And I see that a lot of these things, because I was working at a relocation company before my current position as a translator and cultural mediator. So I was dealing with a lot of these people who are applying for these kinds of visas, and so many things that you speak of are non-existent problems for them. Because they can come, for example, with paid, health insurance for private stuff, so they can literally pay some kind of €30 monthly health insurance, and they just have to have a lot of money. I see that, you know, the government kind of sees people who are a big piggy bank, you know, not really citizens as, you know, you can have all the rights and you don't have to really kind of have any issues. And also the landlords don't treat them as bad because they can, you know, pay really big money that even Croatians can't pay. I'm interested in how you see this like kind of hypocrisy, and do you see a possibility of any kind in appealing to these kinds of communities? Because of course, like there's also black people, you know, among digital nomads, and I mean it's also of course like a very complicated, I think, connection with Africans and then African diasporas all around the world. But yeah, I'm just interested, like in your perspective, do you see any kind of policy negotiation and cooperation with these kinds of communities in advocating for your own rights? This was a very long question, I'm sorry.
I just would like to mention that in most cases, reaching Croatia, for us Africans is not even something that is easily accessible, because in the whole of African continent, there are only 4 Croatian embassies, and most of these digital nomads that are, let's say, maybe of African origin, most of them are either living here in Europe for many years, or let's say they live in the States, or I don't know, in Canada. But in most cases, and from what I've seen, people would love to come here to, let's say, invest and live here or study here or leave something to the government, but they can't even reach here in the first place, because that bilateral agreement that needs to exist is currently non-existent between most African countries and Croatia. And most people find themselves in a situation where they know about Croatia. Most people have heard about the country and the African continent, but like I said, we don't have an embassy here even, and in the African continent as well, these countries that have Croatian embassy are all in the north. It's just Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, and Libya, which for most of us, I think we all have to even apply for a visa to even get to these countries. So if, for example, you want to come to Croatia, let's say you're from, I don't know, Mauritania or Senegal, and you first need to apply for a visa to even get to, I don't know, Egypt or Morocco, where you can then apply for a visa to come to Croatia. That in a way, so I think this, for us to negotiate with them, to even talk with them, I'm sure I can see some kind of cooperation happening, but I think this needs to go on the level of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to actually explain to them that, you know, they can see their own interest in all this, which is, let's say, for example, the lack of labor force here. I'm sure that, you know, they can, if they would establish, for example, a Croatian embassy in one country that would cover the whole, you know, West Africa, in another country that would cover, let's say, Eastern Africa, and another one that would cover the whole South. People, let's say, can migrate here legally, which is very important, and it can feel, you know, the emptiness and the lack of work for us that I think Croatia is currently experiencing. So that's just what I would say on this topic. Sorry.
I will not add much to what Hamida just said, but this is also what we are trying to show or to put out loud, is this kind of discrimination in the law. Because, you know, for the Ministry of Interior, some purpose of staying are more valid than others, which is not the point of an immigration policy. All the purpose must be the same, and all the purpose you must bring the same documents in. In this sense, when you are only looking for those who are, I would say, financially stable or well enough in order to live, this also spoiled the Croatian lifestyle and way of living, because an apartment that was rented for €2,000 a month, when the person leaves, the landlord would not want less than that. And there's no salary. Okay, maybe there is, but there's nobody in Zagreb who has such a salary to have an apartment for €2,000 a month. So it's not a win-win situation. It's a win situation at one moment. This benefits maybe the state in some way. They can also show that Croatia is an attractive country because there's a lot of digital nomads and everything else. But the community itself becomes kind of disrupt at that level. So this is all I could say about this.
Anyone else who has another question? You have your opportunity now.
Se ovo snima? Ok, gdje je ta kamera? Ja ne volim biti snimana. Dobro, ok, no matter. So I would like, when I was listening to that, I was thinking of many things happened to me, for example, and to many of us living in Croatia. And I would just like to let you know my opinion. I don't know if you know about the book of Hassan, Fantasy of White Nation. It's a great book. He's questioning like the notions such as tolerance. So white people think that they are tolerant to other people, but who are they to be tolerant? It means that I'm here in this country. Is it my country? It is not my country. It is country of everybody. But unfortunately, it's not like many people think. People are attached to the country and they think this is our own country. So this is my point of view. I tend to be like a cosmopolitan, but this term doesn't exist anymore. It's not in fashion, perhaps. It's old, doesn't matter. And for example, I also study in the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. And and you reminded me, it was time ago when I started to study, and I came from smaller town in Croatia, and I realized with the attitude I was approaching them to be kind, you know, I'm not going to end anywhere, you know. I should be fighting with this bureaucracy. And in Croatia, as you already know, bureaucracy is really like a big problem. But what does it mean? It means that people here don't care. And on the other side, we are really in a small country. We are in a backward country. And unfortunately, so I'm Croatian, so I'm from here, from my birth. I speak the language here. But many times I felt outsider because I'm not with the mainstream. I'm not with, you know, like the professors who tend to be professors. No, I want to critically open them and to think. But this is not how it's going on. And why is not going on? So I'm talking now about this society. And I don't realize why this society cannot change. Because for 30 years, or whatever, they are not changing. And Lucia, you mentioned about anti-colonial history. Yes, indeed. But here you have politicians which stars are Western society and Western politicians. And money is all around what they want, what is important to say to them. So I'm not surprised with these digital nomads. I just read a little bit of this law, and I think the maximum digital nomads can be here is 1 year. I think it can be prolonged, etc. So I will shortly end, and I just wanted to perhaps to give you answer to this 600 kuna for health insurance per month. So I run a small enterprise, and this is the form Obert, which is the easiest, which is the cheapest, and still every month I need to pay more than 600 for the health insurance. Just this obligatory. So I think this relates to that. And it increases because it is connected with the average price in Croatia or in Zagreb. I don't know, Croatia, I suppose. So every time this 600 or whatever, this amount is rising because salaries are bigger every year in Croatia. Okay, so this is just, I think this is explanation. I don't know why foreign students should pay that. I don't know that, but perhaps this is explanation for that. So I can, and I was thinking, I can opt to be unemployed. I have Croatian citizenship, so as I'm Croatian citizen, they can, I don't know, they can give me social assistance, not social assistance, but I can perhaps benefit of this free health insurance, but this is so stupid. But I was thinking, you know, why I'm paying this? So this is Croatia. And what else I wanted to say? I think nothing. And yes, I wanted to say also, you mentioned government should do it, local things. No, I don't think that government and people there will do anything. We should do. So people from the grassroots, these are where changes can and should come. I'm not calling for revolution. I'm not optimist. I mean, I'm not optimistic, perhaps. I'm not negative. I don't know. I think this is realism. We are living in this, I don't want to use whatever name. It's a beautiful country, of course, beautiful nature, etc. Kind people, you know, it depends, kind or not. But this is wrong. I don't know. I was asking, what is that? Is this in the history of this country? Perhaps. All the time it was some bigger power ruling over this territory, and now these politicians are behaving the same, and people tend not to pay taxes instead of asking politicians to do their jobs. So I think I will end. I think the only thing we can do it is to do something together. And good things is that Croatia is full of people from all over the world. So the changes will happen. We do it or not do. Thank you.
Rahela, sorry, I have to cut you because the organizers are looking at us in a, with yes. I think we don't have space. Yeah.
Be very quick. Thank you very much to all of you for coming here today and for sharing your experiences. I think that it's really kind of powerful to hear, you know, to hear from people who experience things, and I think that, you know, creating spaces for people to share their experiences, their realities, and their testimonies is really powerful. And a lot of the time we talk about data and we talk about statistics, and that's just really colonial. And I think that if we want to decolonize our practice when it comes to anti-racism and when it comes to organizing, we need to make space for people to share their testimonies. And I think that it's kind of the responsibilities of organizations like ENAR, which is where I work, to kind of platform these experiences. So yeah, that's a thank you. And I don't really know where to look. I'll look at you. So I work at the European Network Against Racism, which is the biggest anti-racist and the only pan-European anti-racist organization in Europe. We're a network of over 160 organizations, and all of our organizations are kind of spread across Europe, not only kind of European Union, but kind of Council of Europe, so including Turkey and the UK and Norway. And we're based in Brussels, and we kind of operate on 3 axes. The first is, I'll start with networking because that's the most important thing that we do. We have this massive network. We're a kind of big community of anti-racist organizations, and we are within that. We kind of have alliances, coalitions. We support each other's work, and the network is really at the heart of what we do. We gain our legitimacy through them. Our network is really broad. We're mostly kind of community-led grassroots organizations, but we also have think tanks, you know, umbrella organizations, platforms of lawyers, and we have members representing different kind of community interest groups, so like people of African descent, for example, people who experience Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-Gypsyism, but we try to kind of think about structural racism more broadly, and the fact that actually despite being different communities and facing different issues, you know, having unique experiences, actually what unites us is the fact that is structural racism. You know, white supremacy is our common denominator, and so we try to build solidarity between different groups and think about themes. We also do advocacy and kind of policy monitoring and things like this towards the institutions, the European Commission and the Parliament. We work on different thematic areas from policing to climate justice, economic justice. other things. AI, artificial intelligence, that's a big one nowadays. And we do research. So this is kind of what we do, and if you're interested, we would love to have you as part of our network. Kind of part of the strategy is to develop the network in this part of Europe, and it's clear that you've done some incredible, exceptional work. And being as part of the network, you kind of have access to our General Assembly, training spaces, seminars. Like I said, we really try to make sure that the movement is driving the work that we do at an EU level. So we would kind of give spaces for you to come share your experiences. There's also opportunities to access funding from us, like CPS. I'm going to wrap it up now. Thank you so much, though. It's been very nice. Thank you.
Outside.